So we've just gone over Josiah's backstory, because when we're doing an inductive method, we're thinking about the 5 W questions and the 1 H question: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And we know that there was a good king, and so we had hope as we were hearing about all the reforms that this good King Josiah did. But we also know, we've just read Lamentations, and we know that something happened between the two, the good king and the destruction of Jerusalem in 587 by Babylon. And it was a horrendous catastrophe. Horrendous. It was a physical catastrophe, it was a social catastrophe, and it was a spiritual catastrophe. So we have this promise that was given to Abraham in Genesis 12. We have Yahweh choosing Israel as his people, giving them his law, establishing Jerusalem as the capital city under King David, and then all of the kings of Judah after that, where his temple was, so that people could come and worship him, so that all the nations would be blessed, and so that his name would be exalted. And we've got this horrible catastrophe. People are dead. The social structure is completely obliterated. The kings, the princes, the elite leaders, the priests, the prophets, everyone is just decimated. And it's a spiritual catastrophe too, because now we've got this question in our minds: aren't we the elect people of Yahweh? We thought we were his people. This was his capital city. His temple was here. All worship in the whole world for Yahweh was supposed to happen here in this temple, and now it's gone. And so the crisis is real, and it happens on so many levels. But there's some themes that I want you to look for in this third poem of Lamentations, and I want to also show you that there's hope in this poem. So let me look at that. First of all, we've got the theme of horror. As you're looking at this poem, even you could go back to poems 1 and 2 as well. Just make note of all the horrors. What kind of horrible things are you seeing here? So the theme of horror, it's worse than any horror movie that you might see, a fantasy kind of horror movie. This is real life human horror. And then the second theme I want you to look for as you are reading poem 3, and if you want to go back in 2 and 1 as well, is the theme of calamity and the causes of that calamity. So what caused the calamity? That's one reason that I wanted to go back and catch the backstory here of the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel, so you could see that it's been a long period, hundreds of years of disobedience and generational sin that have caused the calamity. But there's also some clues in the poems of Lamentations about the causes of the calamity, and I think you can pinpoint those and find a few of those examples as well if you do a close reading. And then the third theme that I want you to look for in the first 3 poems is the appeal for mercy. There are so many reasons to cry out in anger and frustration, but also a cry for help. Please, Lord, show mercy on us. Please help us. This was your city. Please, what's going on here? And I want you to look for those 3 themes as you are reading these poems and think about them. So we've got horror, causes, and appeal for mercy. And then finally, what I want you to see in this third poem, and why I call it a climax poem, is because there's actually some hope in this third poem. So let me get my my Lamentations open, and we can look at it together. So it echoes some of the hope in Job, and it echoes some of the hope in the Psalms as well. So that's one characteristic of Yahweh and his people, is that we believe in his steadfast loving kindness and his faithfulness. And so even when things are really going bad, even if it's not our fault, if things are going bad around us, we still have hope in him, because personally as Christians, we're people of the resurrection. We have hope in being resurrected and ruling with him in his kingdom, his new kingdom here. So anyway, if you look at the third poem, there's this spiritual progress that happens, and I'm going to show it to you and just tell you so you can go look at it yourself. So if you were to divide the poem into 3 sections, we said that there's 66 verses in poem number 3, and that those 66 verses are actually 3-verse acrostics that represent the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So of those verses, if you look at verse 1 through 39, big chunk of chapter 3, poem number 3, we have this spiritual progress happening. The sufferer, who is the character in chapter 3 or in point 3, achieves this patient faith. You'll see it happen as you're reading through this. And then in verses 40 and 41, he calls on his people to return to Yahweh. And then the last thing that you'll see here in terms of spiritual progress is in verses 42 to 66, he intercedes for the whole community. So he has suffered, he has seen horrible catastrophe, horrendous catastrophe, and he has a turn where he begins to patiently show faith and ask his people to return, call them to repentance, and then he starts to intercede on their behalf, intercede on behalf of the community. So if you are interested in going deeper with that, go look at those 3 main segments of poem number 3 and see if you can find anything there that shows that there's some spiritual progress and some hope. I think it's good to have hope in the midst of despair. Okay, so I will catch up with you soon. Thanks. Bye.